Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
Struggling to keep your team engaged, connected, and mentally well, especially in today's high-stress work environment? That's what our guest is all about today. And I'm going to introduce to you Robert Manolson from Powerful Play Experiences. For nearly 19 years, Robert has brought high-energy, joy-filled team development and workplace mental health workshops to organizations across Alberta, both in person and online. Don't expect boring PowerPoints. Robert gets people moving, laughing, and truly connecting. Beyond the play, he shares a powerful personal mission, openly living with and managing depression and anxiety, while challenging business leaders to prioritize mental health every day. He leads by example, especially for men, encouraging them to be authentic, brave, and vulnerable in talking about their mental well-being. Robert, welcome, sir.
Now, this is the three of us in the same space together. I don't think this has ever happened. I've connected with Wayne many times, and I've connected with you, Bernie, many times. But the three of us together, how does that feel, Wayne? All of us amazing people, amazing men who day to day in our lives manage our mental health. How does that feel, Wayne? All of us can.
I like the word phenomenal. It's a good word.
As I said a few minutes ago, there's a lot of genius in this room right now. There's a lot to be shared by all of us. So today's episode is more of a conversation, Bernie. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I got a question for you. And I know that you like the color green, and you have green-rimmed glasses. What's the story behind the glasses? Whoa.
What's the story? What's the story behind the green glasses? First and foremost, I want to thank Mike and Brandy Christensen, owners of Venus Eye Boutique here in Edmonton, Alberta. Mike is an award-winning eyewear designer. And 19 years ago, he said, you need a set of cool glasses. I'm going to design these lime green type eyewear for you so you can rock the house in your business and powerful play experiences. And I waited a whole year before I got these phenomenal pair of glasses. But you know what the storyline behind it is? As I pull up my notes, the real story behind it is, and I'm going to throw a term at you and ask me if you've ever heard of this term, mental health optimism. Mental health optimism.
Mental health, but the optimism, but never in one string.
Okay, and I see a look on your face, Wayne, right now, and it's saying to me, now there's a term I'd never heard before. What comes to mind when I give you the term mental health optimism? And I'll tie it back to the man behind the green glasses.
Interestingly enough, resonate with all three words. I've never heard it as a term before, but I like the fact that you created one. I'm a pretty optimistic guy, and I certainly believe in prioritizing mental wellness. So yes, I'd love to hear more.
You hit the nail on the head when you said it's a phrase that I created, and it is mine. It is my own, and it came out of our experiences during COVID. I found myself working hard at mental health optimism, just working hard at it, maintaining an optimistic thinking around my mental health. So I actually defined it. Would you like to hear the definition?
Yes.
Okay, think of the definition and the reason behind the green glasses, because it all comes together. So mental health optimism means I'm a mental health optimist. Wayne, you are a mental health optimist. We face defeat. We face adversity. We find ways to deal with it. We choose not to be consumed by it, and we surround ourselves with support networks. We speak our truth when life doesn't go well. We function in the wacky world of work where challenges will be inevitable. the mental health optimist. We move on. We forgive ourselves. We validate our feelings. We look for healthy ways to maintain our daily personal wellness. We are resilient. We are our own designated mental health survivors. We are mental health optimists. God, this is standing choose for myself. That's the man behind the green glasses. The green glasses is a constant reminder of my writings around mental health optimism. Am I able to live this each and every day? Of course not. It's not realistic to think that. But it provides me with a foundation of positivity as I go through some of those dark times. Your thoughts, Bernie?
I think this kind of feeds into your powerful play experiences brings people together, right? Because I think that's part of the inspiration of bringing it forward. You've reached in yourself, found a path for yourself to shine a light, especially when things aren't going well. Over the last 19 years, you've created a business around that for the corporate space.
And you just said something very interesting. The idea of shining a light on myself. The business didn't start with that idea. It was never about shining a light on myself through mental health optimism. The idea of shifting it to shining a light on myself came years later.
I think my interpretation of the light is not so much on yourself as opposed to for yourself. So if you're in a dark space, you don't tend to aim the flashlight in your eyes. Unless you're spoofing somebody at a campfire, you're aiming it where you're traveling to. That's my interpretation. Brought you to the stage of powerful play experiences brings people together.
The idea of shining a light for myself.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate that. Let me make a note of that. Shining a light for myself. Well, in part, why I make mention that it was a thought, shining the light on myself, and I love your approach, shining the light for myself. But why that came later on is because I needed to learn how not to steer the mental health conversation. And what is the name of our episode today?
I think our episode today is titled Everything Starts with a Conversation.
I'd like to hear more from Wayne. I'd like to hear more from you about the act of starting a conversation. Because the idea of shining a light on me or shining the light for me came years later when I began to feel comfortable not fearing the conversation about my own mental health challenges. And I see Wayne nodding yes to that. So what's up, Wayne?
Well, thanks to COVID, everybody got a mental health diagnosis, whether it was depression or anxiety. Podcasting is older than Bernie and I, but we found this neat vehicle whereby with 3 people, it isn't adversarial. But with 3 people, it just flows. We've had over 300 interviews. I related with some more than others. A few of them, I actually developed situational Tourette's.
We've got meds for that.
It's called Scotch.
But I had to give you some applause. The traditional vehicle that our society did choose was you're not neurotypical and you have this diagnosable illness. So therefore you're a victim. And now here's your pension check. Get a basement apartment and have a nice day. Maybe, just maybe, there might be enough for a case of beer at the end of the month. Being a champion, you said we had to turn that on its head. I'm sure you have fans, and maybe you even have critics. But the idea that corporations could look at wellness and mental wellness and change the entire model so it was more functional, I think is huge. I applaud you.
I appreciate that. It's way too easy to start a conversation about the importance of better mental health at work. It's way too easy to share my own personal story. And I'm flabbergasted, or I continue to be flabbergasted and often disappointed at how leaders and decision makers in today's world of work just don't get it. They don't get it. Positive mental health at work. Let's slap on a definition of that. I'm into definitions this morning. So we have our mental health optimism definition. Positive mental health at work. This is not complicated, Bernie. This is not complicated. A space of well-being and wellness. And you've used that word wellness a few times, Wayne, and I thank you for that, because the word mental is a dangerous word. It's a dangerous word. And when it's tagged with health or illness, it just brings all of us down. Yeah, there's so many suggestions as to what it means that is negative. But when we turn it into mental wellness, we're shifting the energy to a far better place. Positive mental health at work, a space of well-being and wellness in which everyone achieves their potential. Everyone can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, be their authentic self, and is able to make a contribution. And Bernie, there's no budget required for this. There's no budget required for this. And that's what flabbergasts me and continues to astound me with leaders and decision makers in today's world of work around the idea that they're just not ready to move forward on it for fear of the costs. And they attach money, a financial investment, into people's well-being, people's wellness. Is this something that you see in the world of work where each of you reside?
Actually, my wife calls me self-unemployed. I think that's brilliant. Self-unemployed. But I've done a lot of thought about this and written some things. You may be closer to this than you realize. Bernie is more spreadsheet-oriented than I am. And he came from corporate, and things have budgets, and there were quarterly performance, and they used to have, when I did my corporate world, I had the HR on an auto dial. One thing I find is if we look at what is possible, maybe even what is probable, and we say, okay, being well, and take illness out of the picture altogether. The neat thing is our culture and entertainment system, when they show illness, shows the worst 15 minutes of somebody's life, frankly, because it makes the show more entertaining. But when we all are on some kind of an ebb and flow, there are good days and there are bad days. And the key is to make as many good days as possible. Now, you and I, Robert, are trying to find a way that we can sow the good days. Oh, I like that.
Tell our listeners today what they're looking at.
That's why I was going to mention it was an audio podcast. But you got the big word better. And I like the idea.
You better.
Oh, you better.
Oh, he's brought, yeah.
He's right. One thing that I like is trying to show people that you can be, now the new word is neurodiverse. And as much as it's ridiculous, it's also powerful. That you can be different and innovative and wild and actually get stuff done. And as long as you're not intimidating others, you should be allowed to do it. I'm finding that slowly happening. Ironically enough, I find the podcast world, it lets people drip in. We've talked to health professionals. We've talked to corporate professionals. We've talked to HR professionals. We've talked to crazy people with green glass, design play. The neat thing is, I believe that we're changing the model so that we can all be more well. And I'm saying
I'm equally or more excited than you, Wayne. The challenge is not all of us are as excited. And I believe through my experiences with powerful play experiences brings people together. Pre-COVID, the tagline was powerful play experiences, positive workplace mental health for teams. Because I truly believe that coming out of COVID, the world of work, if not community and society, we are ready to not just start the conversation, but we are actually now on a place of readiness, willingness, and ableness to do something. So my question to both of you a few minutes ago was, are you seeing that in whatever region of Canada you reside, that willingness and ableness and readiness?
I think in the corporate space, a lot of larger spaces realize, because size matters, if you don't address things, ripples can start happening. And it's like watching an avalanche, right? You start, little snowflake starts rolling down, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, half the snow face is coming down on top of you, and no one's coming up for air easily. So I think in larger spaces, sometimes they recognize that, and that they try to find a good fit. Now, whether they find a good fit or not, that could be another story. And I think what I want to reflect back to you is, there are some people that might have myths associated to mental health.
Right.
And what are you finding that are myths for businesses, whether you're small or large? Because that dictates what you understand and what you know. If I cut my finger slicing veggies, then I bring it up to my mouth and suppress the bleeding, or I have to go see the ER because I need stitches, but I know what to do next. But in the mental health, sometimes we don't. So what are the myths that you're finding out there?
Okay, so let's come back to something I said a couple of minutes ago about the word mental. So I'm holding up a sign right now to Wayne and Bernie, and it has two words on the sign, mental health. Now, I just want you to picture the sign with just the word health. Wayne, how's your health today? Remember, in your response to me, you're just Wayne, average Joe citizen, not Wayne Pratt, the amazing coach and more. How's your health today, Wayne?
It's not as good as it could be and better than it was.
Okay, I appreciate the honesty. Bernie, how's your health today?
I'm on the right side of the lawn, so I think it's good. I woke up today. That's a good start, right? He was able to exit the bed and go to the bathroom and start the day.
Okay, so let's summarize by saying how easy it was for both of you to respond to the question today. You rolled with it very well, and you rolled with it with great humor as well. A typical men responses will throw in a bit of humor around that health question. Now, let's ask the question, how's your mental health today?
I'm actually having a good day, and Robert's actually part of the answer.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Wayne. Bernie?
I was able to find the bathroom without making a mistake. My clarity of where I had to go next was good. Right now, in the area, I've been fed and watered, and I'm content. My environment is going how I think it should be going. Could be at different points where do I go, geez, I wish I'd done that, or does that ebb and flow in there? Can I take the whole day as a sum? But overall, it undulates, right? It's just the undulation is not so drastic. Now, are the days that can be drastic? Yeah. And it's maybe a good night's rest as part of the solution, or grabbing a bite to eat so I'm not leaving the space hangry, because those can be driver points.
I'm going to hold up a card and say, what does the card say? Yes. I want to thank Wayne and Bernie for so comfortably responding to the question, how's your mental health? One of them is, when I do this small activity in my workshops, what I tend to get when I ask the question, how's your health, is exactly the reaction that each of you gave. People respond very quickly. They understand and interpret the term health very well, and they're able to let us know exactly where they stand. But as soon as I slap on the word mental, there's always a pause. And people need time to look inside themselves and think about a response. And most often the response is much lower and much more vague. I discovered, coming back to your question, Bernie, the myth, there must be something going on with the word mental as it attaches to words like mental health or mental illness, their personal history with those two terms, mental health and mental illness, is getting in the way of wonderful terms that Wayne brought forward, like mental wellness. And the emphasis isn't even on mental, it's now on the wellness, But when you look at mental health and mental illness, the emphasis is on the word mentals. I'm not sure what's going on. I can speak for myself around my own understandings and misunderstandings around the word mental illness and mental health. There are 4 generations of diagnosed mental illness in both sides of my family.
Wow.
Yeah. And just to explain, my niece, brother, sister, both my parents and their parents siblings. One day I sat back and began counting family members, dead or alive, with diagnosed mental illness. And I stopped counting at 17. I stopped counting at 17. I thought there might be not good for my mental health optimism. So I stopped counting at 17. And growing up with mental illness around me, because my father and my mother experienced mental illness. In fact, the words that were used in their generation was, they would often say, I'm suffering with another bout of depression, another bout of anxiety. Today, we would never use that language. And so I think many myths around mental health and mental illness stem from some of those early definitions or terms that were used to describe the illness that is your health, because mental health is your daily well-being. The illness is it's the illness of your health. And your illness can be mental. Your illness can be physical. Your illness can be financial. It could be spiritual. But these are learnings that I've discovered today, not through any experiences with my late father and my mother. In fact, it was highly disturbing to observe their siblings using very abusive and hurtful language towards one another about their own mental health. It wasn't kind. And I remember terms like, we should put you in a sane asylum. Wayne used the word crazy a few minutes ago, not realizing that was a common word used during my parents' generation. You're crazy. You're mentally crazy. A mental case. And you know what? Today, I can't believe that I actually sat around and did nothing. When I heard those terms used by my parents and their siblings amongst one another. Today, I use the term I lived with and I manage depression and anxiety. Thank you to the Canadian Mental Health Association of Alberta for teaching me those more positive terms. And you can see those terms shatter any myth about mental illness and mental health that I grew up with. I'm living with and managing. And a key point there, I don't say I'm living with and managing my depression and my anxiety. And why don't I say that, Wayne? Why do I suggest depression and anxiety is something that I don't own when I say I live with and manage depression and anxiety?
I have found is that if you say that, it is much healthier to say you have rather than are. When you say you have a mental illness, that's one thing. When you say you are mentally ill, you're actually creating an entire box. That's your entire identity.
Right, that was my parents' generation. You are mentally ill. You are a mental case. You should be in the psych ward. That was another expression I've heard frequently. They should admit you to the psych ward. Can you imagine those terms today? And the words living with and managing have been a lifesaver for me. Wherever I go and whomever I speak to, including leaders and decision makers in the world of work, it's changing the language around the word mental. I'm going to pull up some signs here, and I want you to tell those who are with us today what you're reading because they're much more positive. How about this one? Tell the
Mental
audience.
capacity. Mental,
Really? Yeah, isn't that positive? Yes. Why do you say that?
talks about something you have been giving.
How about this one?
Mental health champion.
Yes. What's up with that?
Everyone's getting the participation trophy, actually.
It's one of my favorite.
Mental sharpness. So clarity.
I'll bring out a couple more.
Show up with a Rorschach test, though. I'll give you a whole hour's long story.
You'll like this one, Wayne.
Yes.
What's the song?
I would just go with resilience, but you've got mental health resilience. I just like resilience.
You're right. I like mental health resilience. The idea here, if I've been listening to terminology used in our everyday world, that's positive and uses the word mental in a positive light, right? So that we can shatter the myths, the kinds of myths that I spoke about growing up and being exposed to my parents' generation. Here's one of my most favorite terms that doesn't use the word mental.
Brain illness.
Yeah, now, Bernie's personality type would totally be attracted to the term brain illness.
I don't think that's my most seductive verbiage. But the mental health and illness, we can split hairs as we talk about this, because if your biochemistry inside your cranium is off, and you say that to say whether there's a hormone that started increasing or decreasing, or for example, a tumor starts to happen and it presses into the parts of the brain, it can influence your behaviors. And I know those are different things, right?
You just described brain illness. So you made it tangible. People can visualize the brain. When we use the term brain health or brain illness, people get a picture in their mind of a thing, right? And that thing just shifts the old language around mental health and mental illness. It would be no different than me saying, I have a leg illness, or I have a shoulder illness. I crushed too many boards in hockey, and now I have a shoulder illness, a constant pain. So when I say brain illness, it's very tangible for people. It's a whole new way to talk about mental health by identifying the brain as experiencing an illness. Now, we'll just get off this topic, but I want to come back to Lane's use of the word wellness. What if we called it brain wellness? What if it's your brain wellness today? And everybody would get stuck on the word wellness, which is cool.
Okay, I'd like to segue for a sec. Most of our listeners are either in business, have a business, or work for a business. Something that you care deeply about is how do we make business more joyful? Let's not just talk about illness. Let's talk about joy. How do we actually bring more joy into business? Maybe even using Robert's tools.
Okay. So we spent a lot of time on this subject of mental health. How ironic that the gentleman you're sitting with here, me, lives with and manages depression and anxiety. But I'm also a leading facilitator of play-based learning workshop experiences. I love to play. And Bernie, I want to thank Bernie. Very early in COVID, he invited me to deliver a play-based workshop experience online. The very first time I practiced that online, it was a mess, but nobody knew it was a mess because it came across as extremely playful, which means it was a bit messy, right? A bit messy. And that's what play is all about, the messiness, right? It's very structured and organized, then maybe not so pretty sometimes, but it has a function. And play is best when it's dysfunctional. There's not a lot of functioning going on. It's really messy, really messy. In my view, play is the fastest and most accessible remedy for anyone, any adult experiencing mental health challenges, for it alone frees the soul from pain, sufferings, and hardships, and that thus creates space and joy and happy to step in and ignite our spirit. Thus, powerful play experiences brings people together. I've always said, Bernie, fun at work and play never stand a chance in a conversation with a leader and a decision maker when they say to me, we have work to be done. Play and fun at work doesn't stand a chance of being given attention. It's disturbing to me. It's concerning that a balance of work and play or work and fun at work drives positive mental health. And so there's a lot of convincing that I need to do with decision makers and leaders to see the whole idea of fun at work and play as a better mental health strategy. And, when I get back from them, these are some of the barriers that I see. Maybe we'll start to wrap it up pretty soon. Pick a number, Wayne, between 1 and 9. And here's what I often get from employers when I introduce the idea of play and fun at work as good mental health, better mental health in the workplace. Pick a number 1 to 9, and I'll pick from my list that particular response that I get from employers based on your number. Pick a number. 7. Let's see what number 7 reads on Robert's top 9 barriers that get in the way of positive mental health in the workplace. It reads, I don't think it's my job. Remember, this is the leader or decision maker. I don't think it's my job to help someone who is experiencing some sort of mental health problem. After all, people are hired to do a job. My job is not to take care of someone else's mental health problems. What year is it today? Is this 1960? 1970? What year is it today?
It depends when you're viewing. If we go into the archive, we really don't know.
To your point, Robert, if I were working for a company and I were to have a slip and fall, sustain an injury, here in the province of Ontario, if I go unconscious, you have to call the Ministry of Labor. That's workplace safety. At the end of the day, the reason it matters is that the Ministry of Labor views things like if someone sustains an injury. The problem with the mental health component or mental wellness component is sometimes you can't see the injury right off the bat. It might be a delay. And even when you're exposed to toxic chemicals. I remember an instance where a person that was cleaning and used this particular cleaner, supposed to wear gloves, didn't. And then one day the body says, no, now you're going to have a rash. You're going to have an immediate reaction. And I think mental wellness flows in the same space. Some people get having the mental wellness is key and critical. And yeah, you got to care because that person's working with you. They're part of your team. They're part of, it's not a piece of equipment. You get a replacement part. They're part of your team.
And so on that note, take a look at any province's occupational health and safety standards today. It now includes psychological health and safety in the workplace. So we've grown from just physical injury and to now psychological health and safety, respecting the fact that psychological injury also takes place in the workplace. Okay, very quickly, just pick a number, Bernie. Pick a number.
Between 1 and 9?
Yeah.
Or any other number?
It's okay. We'll go with number 3.
A typical barrier that I hear from employers, leaders, and decision makers when I say let's play for better mental health. Oh, this is good. I don't have time. Heavy workloads, busy schedules, limited resources make it very difficult to think about putting yet another important item on my plate, especially a framework for workplace psychological health and safety.
The 1200s where you have a guy wearing an armored suit on a horse with a lance. Look to pick a fight.
Robert, I have a meeting in about 5 minutes with a gentleman from the Canadian Mental Health Association He's very interested in the work that I do. I've attended many conferences here in Edmonton, hosted by the Canadian Mental Health Association. I'm also a certified psychological health and safety advisor through the Canadian Mental Health Association. And I recently applied for a casual position as a peer facilitator in one of the Canadian Mental Health Association programs. Thank you, Wayne. Wayne just gave me a thumbs up. And I need to have a conversation with him about that. But most importantly, as the title of today's episode, we had a conversation. Everything starts with a conversation. And we did it. I'm honored to have had your company today.
Robert, let's assume that somebody's listening to this podcast and they want to start a conversation. How are they going to hold you?
I can give out an email. I can give my LinkedIn profile. But why miss out on an opportunity to learn more about me through the website and then pick up the phone and call me? Let's start a conversation. I'm holding a card in front of the camera for those who are here today.
You matter is what the card says.
That's it. That's my second most used phrase with myself and others to lift people's spirits, to have them feel worthy, esteemed. I'm confident. Everybody needs to feel that they matter.
Thank you to my co-host, Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you found this conversation intriguing and you want to focus on mental wellness, reach out to Robert. It's a good conversation to have because it's the beginning of a conversation, and from there you grow.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.